13 souls stolen, one rescued from the refuse. A man barely past a boy, raised by bears of blood-soaked oaks. As love grows distant, cotton candy tastes so sweet. Lust and love, what's the difference? The badger jokes and steals, the world sneers and scorns. Blamed for their father's sins, innocent hearts drown in Dhampir sins.
Welcome to Dhampir Sins, Book 1 of the Sacred Beast series by Sarah Yuher. 1. Sins of the Fathers. 11th of Anuganai's dusk, 23:47 a.m. Kiran. 1 ham and cheese omelet and 1 bear breakfast special, Kiran said as he set the 2 hot plates on the table. Can I get you anything else? Just some more coffee, the large, muscular man said. The woman across from him was petite and shook her head at Kiran. Both had the scaled wings and tails of dragonkin, sapphire blue that glittered in the dim, smoky light. Kiran nodded and left to retrieve the coffee. The Dancing Pig was a dimly lit dive bar in downtown Exagra. The city had been the heart of Nefarian and Absalom's realm 2,000 years ago. Until the mercy of heaven rose to power, the Styak Quartet became the Styak Six. Then the Sanguinai fell, Angelus rose into the sky to become a second moon, and the secret of Dhampirs was revealed. The only Sanguinai in the world were either sired by the wrath of heaven or were once Dhampirs who died and came back. Most of them were under the control of Malum Sanguinum, a sect of necromancers determined never to allow the Sanguinai to rise to power again. They had broken away from everyone to form their own country in the east. They bound the Sanguinai vampires and bred Dhampirs, training them to be nothing but weapons of war. Dhampirs were free in other countries, but most people still distrusted them for what had happened in the millennia before mercy. Many had trouble finding work and lived in impoverished communes in the dregs of cities or small hamlets away from cities. Even as a Lurus Rinfurian, Kiran had been lucky when the local werbear grizzly adopted him after his mother died of the bleeding when he was young. The scent of stale alcohol and tobacco smoke mixed with the smell of breakfast and coffee. Kiran yawned as he set down his tray, picked up the coffee pot, and headed back to the pair of dragonkin, refilling the man's mug before returning the coffee pot to its warmer and finding a spot to sit where he could keep an eye on the table. The bar had closed earlier at 3 o'clock in the morning, but the Dancing Pig itself never closed. It remained open 36 hours a day, 9 days a week, and served breakfast all day. The bar opened in the afternoon at 1800 hours. Kiran yawned and glanced at his watch. 7:32. His shift would end at 9 o'clock when Ashley came in for her shift. His mother was scheduled to come in at 8 o'clock with his father. The couple was his only table, but when all the other bars had closed for the night, the drunks came to the Dancing Pig to sober up with breakfast before heading home. On Ariala, the last call rush hadn't been too bad. This close to the end of his shift, Kiran was tired and ready to go home to his tiny apartment. It had been 2 months since his girlfriend, Lacey Matheson, had agreed to move in with him and attempt the Wyvern song this coming Ravenized dawn. Since his parents were Lurin Elkin and Kiran was Lurus Rinfurian, the Furians had been against the adoption. Since Kiran had the shadow spark and not the flame spark, they finally relented when Oren and Aaron Ursine agreed to raise Kiran in furry traditions to the best of their abilities. 2 years ago, for Kiran's 18th birthday, he had gone to Furia to perform the stag hunt with the Lurus Rinfurian elders. With his blood-dipped ebony hair, they didn't need a DNA test to determine which bloodline was his. The Obsidian elders, direct descendants of Kiran Obsidian, the Black Butterfly himself, hadn't been impressed with his shadow spark or with the skills he had learned living with the werbears. It had been interesting to learn that his birthday wasn't the first of Ravenized Dawn, as he had grown up believing. Most Furian men performed the stag hunt on their 19th birthday. Shadow Walkers performed it at 18 on the Shadow Day, which only came once every 6 years between the 45th of Ravenox Night and the 1st of Ravenized Dawn. Kiran lightly touched the antler-hilted dagger in the small of his back. After he had earned both the dagger and the braid at his right temple, his Croyan fur, he was now considered a man and allowed to find a wife. "Shouldn't you be waiting tables?" Rand asked as he leaned on the kitchen window. This late, the 18-year-old bear Lura was the only cook in the kitchen. With golden blonde hair, sapphire eyes, and bronze skin like copper, Rand was almost a foot taller than Kieran and twice his size. At about 6 feet 1 inch, Kieran looked nothing like him. Fair skin that never tanned in the sun, his eyes were a golden amber, and his hair was obsidian black with streaks of blood red. 2 years older, but Kieran always felt like a shrimp beside his brothers and their father, next to all the blood oak sleuth adult men in Exagora. "I have 1 table," Kieran pointed out. "What about cleaning?" Rand asked with a grin. "Already done. Once they pay and Ashley arrives, I'm a free damper," Kieran said as he leaned back against the wall. "Well, find something to do. Mom and Dad always come early." Right on cue, their mother entered the bar with their father, Oren and Aaron Ursine. Oren ruled the Blood Oak Sleuth as Grizzly, but Aaron, his petite wife, led the kitchen of the Dancing Pig like a dictatorship. She was a fantastic chef, but no matter how hard she tried, all Kieran could cook was frozen meals in a microwave, that and a mean cup of coffee. "Why are you sitting?" Aaron asked as she approached Kieran. Her sapphire eyes sparkled with amusement, and her golden blonde hair was tied back in a tight braid. "Waiting on my table and Ashley," Kieran said tiredly. "Is your prep work done?" "Yes. We'll see about that," she said with a smile and reviewed Kieran's work. She tugged on his braid affectionately when she returned to him to let him know he had done his prep and cleaning work to her satisfaction. His table was almost done with their meal, and Kieran got up to check on them. They requested the check, and a moment later, he handed it to them as he cleared away their dishes. They tipped well, and Kieran found a note on the check he showed Oren. The Grizzly mused. The older version of his son, Rand, only his son Adam, had grown up to mirror his petite wife. Only with his father's height. "You up for some overtime?" Kieran smiled. Who wouldn't say yes to extra money? Ashley was late for her shift, and Aaron had to shoo Rand out of the bar when he took his time leaving, attempting to talk to Ashley before he left for the family home. Kieran chuckled as they walked out together. 3 Dhampirs were on the sidewalk nearby as they left the bar. The oldest was a girl of about 13 to 15 named Maria. She was selling jewelry she had made with shells she collected at the Enderhain River. Her 2 little brothers, Lucas and Mike, sat quietly on either side of her as they watched the early morning commuters. Maria and her mother regularly sold the jewelry they made near the Dancing Pig. Many Dhampirs set up small stalls in this part of Exagora. While many humans distrusted them, shifters were more tolerant. Many would donate blood to the Dhampirs and pay for the items they sold. The Dhampirs would accept the blood from the shifter groups they hoped to join if they went through the transition from damper to shifter. As the adopted son of the Blood Oak Grizzly, Kieran was only allowed to remain a damper as long as his brothers remained the first and second princes of the sleuth. If anything happened to them before either could produce an heir, Kieran would have to become a bear Lurasal Lura. "Hello, first and third princes," Maria said with a bright smile. She sat up straighter and attempted to hide the baby bump that had begun to show. Kieran knelt, browsing the jewelry she had for sale, picking a necklace with rainbow swirled shell and handing a 20 mira bill to Lucas. "Have you been able to get blood for the little one?" he asked as Rand did the same. They also gave them a free family meal coupon at the Dancing Pig. Maria blushed and looked down. "Yes," she said. "Ezekiel and the males of the Kiss ensure we all have what we need." "Have you heard from your mother?" Rand asked. All 3 shook their heads. "No one has seen her." Kieran and Rand exchanged looks. "Have you gone to the police?" "They won't do nothing," Mike growled. "They didn't care when the Malum took Daddy," Lucas added. "Make sure you get a good meal, and don't go anywhere alone," Kieran told them, ruffling the boy's hair. "If Danica doesn't return by Gamerla, I'll go to the police myself." The 3 brightened at that and thanked them as they left. "Dad says he'll talk to the other shifter alphas about keeping an eye on Dhampirs in our areas," Rand said as they bought their tickets at the subway. When Kieran entered the elevator of his apartment complex this early in the morning, only the girl who lived across from him, Echo, was in the elevator with him. In the flickering light, she looked like a complete mess. Stringy blonde hair was in a messy bun, and she scratched absently at her arm as she glanced at Kieran, who was leaning against the wall. She wore a tank top underneath her fishnet shirt and a denim mini-skirt with stockings and sneakers. She smelled of dust and sex with at least 4 men, and Kieran felt a small kernel of pity for the girl. Her name was Echo, and her boyfriend was a piece of shit gangbanger for the local pack of raccoons. Grizzly Orin Ursine didn't think much of the raccoons or their alpha. They were one of the smaller shifter groups in Exagora and followed with whatever the rat alpha decided, which mostly involved drugs and prostitution with the hellhounds. They exited the elevator, and her boyfriend, Steve, was standing at the open door of their apartment, waiting for her. Kieran noticed the flinch in her shoulders as she saw the human male. With dirty jeans and a stained shirt, Kieran wasn't sure what Echo had ever seen in him. Bloodshot, watery eyes glared at Echo, and Kieran resisted pulling her behind him. She was human. There wasn't much a Dhampir could do for her. Even with the guy's police record, the humans never looked favorably on a Dhampir when they picked fights. "You're late," Steve said as he grabbed her arm. "My last trick stiffed me," she cried out. Kieran's growl drew their attention to him. "What are you looking at?" Steve snarled, puffing his chest out and attempting to look more intimidating. Kieran's fangs ached as they extended, and he bared them. "Dinner," he said, his voice more snarling. The blood drained from both humans' faces as Steve pulled Echo into the apartment before slamming the door. Kieran sighed and entered his apartment. His fangs still extended past his lips. The apartment was small, and the door opened to the small kitchen. A breakfast bar separated the kitchen from the living room, and a small hall led to the bathroom and 2 bedrooms. Lacey was at the kitchen counter as she filled her travel mug with peppermint tea. Her dark brown hair was pulled into a ponytail, and she filled her work uniform with all the right curves. Kieran walked up behind her, sliding his hands along her hips, and pulled her into his arms. "Wanna help me relax before bed?" he whispered, trailing kisses along her neck and shoulder. She giggled and turned in his arms to face him. "I have to get to work," she said, reaching up to poke at one of his fangs. "And didn't you say we can't have sex until Ravenized Dawn?" He pouted his lower lip, reaching to hold her hand and kissing her palm. "This early?" he asked. "We can still do other things." "We need the overtime," she said, tapping his thong again. "You know we get overcharged because of these." "Don't remind me," Kieran sighed. "I'll have overtime from the bar soon. Dad offered me some." He moved in to kiss her, but she pressed her fingers to his lips to stop him. "Oh, goody. But I do need to get going," Lacey said as she untangled herself from Kieran's arms. He watched her leave with a frown before he opened the fridge and pulled out a blood beer. He had finished the beer by the time he had stripped and crawled into bed. He pulled Lacey's pillow to him and breathed deeply of her scent as he fell into a tired, frustrated sleep.
Enter the world, but tread with care. Those roots remember every prayer. Carved from ash, from bone, from flame. The sacred beasts don't play or game. Here change comes swift on silver wing, with dragonflies that bite and sting. Truth flickers soft and sharp as steel, and every wound must learn to heal. Don't come armed with hollow lore. This world won't let you fake the war. For those who think they understand, you'll bleed the fastest by your hand. So read and ache, be torn apart. These stories rise from broken hearts. With grit and teeth they scream and soar. You've never known a world like this before.